Jordan Mason is the most valuable backup in Dynasty leagues right now. We'll explain why on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Plus, we'll tell you who to pick up in your fantasy leagues. All that and more next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. You can also read her over at Yahoo. And on today's show, we're breaking down all the injuries from week one. We're going to tell you who to go pick up in your Dynasty waiver wires. But Kate, let's start with that Monday Night Football game last night. The 49ers defeated the Jets in pretty convincing fashion. The biggest story coming out of that game was Jordan Mason, who was a surprise start to us, at least. Not to Jordan Mason, who found out on Friday, but a surprise start for us and looked pretty darn good.
Looked pretty darn good. Might I say, looked like Christian McCaffrey out there. And he got the Christian McCaffrey treatment. Like, it is very clear, abundantly clear that there is a huge tier break between Jordan Mason and every other running back in that lineup. Isaac Guerrero, not even a thought in this game plan. It was all Jordan Mason, and clearly for good reason. I mean, absolutely incredibly efficient. Right now, for those of you like keeping tabs here early on in the season, Jordan Mason currently in second place for that rushing title here to close out week one. 147 rushing yards, 1 touchdown. For the record, the most he's ever had in a season is 258 rushing yards. So he's more than halfway to a career best, and it is only week one. There's no way that he is not the most valuable backup running back in the entire league to be rostering on your dynasty leagues, because Marcus, clearly, if it's not Christian McCaffrey, it's Jordan Mason and not much else.
Yeah. So last night after the game, I believe it was Troy Aikman that was making the point of like, hey, when Christian McCaffrey gets back, maybe they can use these guys in tandem. I don't buy that. Like, I just don't think there's enough touches in this offense. When Christian McCaffrey gets back, you already have Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Jawan Jennings actually had a pretty good game last night. So this isn't going to turn into a running back by committee, at least in my opinion, right? However, I think Jordan Mason looked so good last night that the 49ers might feel comfortable letting Christian McCaffrey have another week off, maybe even another 2 weeks, rather than rushing him back on the field. Like, I think if Mason would have struggled, in pass pro and holding onto the football, maybe you see the 49ers rush him back out on the field. But I think he looked good enough that they can feel patient here. And I think the 49ers know their season really starts in January, right? Like, they're going to make the playoffs. There's no reason to rush Christian McCaffrey back in September. Let's make sure that he's 100% by January. And that's going to open up some big opportunities for Jordan Mason, I would think, at the very least for another week.
Yeah. And I'm not saying I'm projecting like a 50-50 timeshare thing, but I do kind of wonder if, so, you have Christian McCaffrey back, who's dealing with this lingering calf Achilles injury. They're playing for the playoffs. They're already playing for the postseason at this point. Christian McCaffrey's getting older. You just gave him another long-term deal this offseason. Like, would it be a bad thing if you saw Jordan Mason rotate in on more snaps and maybe got some more of that work in between the tackle? Get Christian McCaffrey some of these, touches in the receiving game, maybe touches that aren't going to have him running up the gut against 300-pound defensive linemen. Like, I don't think that would be a bad thing for Christian McCaffrey. Maybe he's not going to touch the ball 300 plus times, but I do think Jordan Mason might actually give them a little bit of flexibility in order to not run Christian McCaffrey into the ground when he's already started off the season with an injury.
Do you think Jordan Mason starts next week against the Vikings?
Without a doubt, in my mind. There was already some speculation last night during Monday Night Football broadcast from Adam Schefter, who says, like, it did not sound upbeat that they were looking for Christian McCaffrey. And I don't think that this performance from Jordan Mason really changed anything. This was supposed to be a really tough Jets defensive line, obviously without Hassan Reddick, but still, like, this was supposed to be a much better unit, and they got gashed.
Yeah, I think he starts. It's also a short week for the 49ers. We're going into Tuesday. They played Monday night. They got to travel to Minnesota. My guess is they're probably going to hold Christian McCaffrey out one more week. And Kate, I think that means that Jordan Mason is a top 10 running back this week at worst.
Pretty easily. Yep.
Yeah. Just a couple other thoughts coming out of Monday Night Football. I think the Jets offense really struggled in the first half. Way too many first and second down runs. In that third quarter, they picked it up a little bit. I'm not overly concerned about the offense. I think like Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson will be fine. This is also just a really tough matchup on grass against one of the best defense in the league. I'm just not panicking yet when it comes to the Jets.
I think it's fair not to panic, but like, you do have to look at the Jets and say, okay, that was just about as badly as things could have gone for them. Obviously, like, come away with the late touchdown to Alan Lazard with, that doesn't matter. Like that, the score should have conceivably been, 13-32. Like that last touchdown was meaningless. Just 14 total first downs on the day. And again, I know this is a good defense, 266 total yards. This was just not an efficient way to attack the ground. Breece Hall, like, I think I'm having more hesitancy in investing in this offense in general. Like, I get Breece Hall, 3.4 yards per carry up against this 49ers defense. That's tough. Obviously, it's the Garrett Wilson show here, 11 total targets in this outing. But I look at the overall production from the team. I look at the time of possession. The Jets had the ball for 21 minutes and 20 seconds. That is pretty catastrophic for anybody who's invested like in redraft or dynasty. Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, those are probably, the first and second picks on your roster. Like, I'm not panicking. It is week one. Weird things happen in week one, but this was not anything that gives me confidence, because I'm suddenly looking at the Jets and I'm saying, and I've been saying this all off season, like, there's not a lot of depth there on that roster.
No. The good thing is they've got a pretty soft schedule coming up. So I think you're going to see this offense get on track pretty quickly. The one thing I will say is I thought Aaron Rodgers, as the game went on, started becoming more aggressive, started to step into some of his throws. You could see in the first quarter, he was pretty hesitant about really trying to drive the football. It got better as the game went on. And I think the more he plays, the more confidence that he has, he'll be fine. So I'm not panicking at all when it comes to the Jets players. I think they're going to be just fine. As for the 49ers, they're a machine. I don't know what else we can say. Some weeks it's going to be the Brandon Ayuk show. Deebo Samuel got more touches in this game. Jaywan Jennings was the leading receiver. Like, this is kind of what you get when you roster.
This is actually Jaywan Jennings was actually their top guy in the Super Bowl last year. So
it's not surprising.
Jennings, wide receiver 1 for this 40. I'm kidding.
Pittsburgh should try to trade for, but not Brandon Ayuk. All right, Kate, let's talk about some unfortunate injuries coming out of week 1. And we had several big names. We will get to all of that next. This episode is brought to you by Hims. No man wants to lose their hair, but for men, it's actually very common. And now with Hims, the solution is simple. Try Hims Hair Loss Solutions, and you'll be joining hundreds of thousands of subscribers who got their flow back. Hims provides access to a range of hair loss treatments that work, all from the comfort of your couch. They offer personalized chewables, oral sprays, and serum treatment options so that you can find what works the best for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/LockedOnNFL. That is HIMS.com/LockedOnNFL for your personalized hair loss treatment options. HIMS.com/LockedOnNFL. Results vary based on studies of tropical and oral medicinal. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. It's 2 shows every single day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks you off the morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. And then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts and you get unprecedented NFL insights, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Kate, let's talk about some of the biggest injuries coming out of week 1. And I want to start with Puka Nacua, who Sean McVay revealed that he has a PCL injury. He's going on the IR list. They believe he could be back in 4 games. What are your thoughts here?
It's going to be tough, but man, oh man, if you bought any sort of dip on Cooper Kupp, who was already kind of discounted in dynasty leagues coming off of a season where he battled with injury, the fact that he's getting older, over that age 30 mark, all of those things combined, you probably got a nice discount on Cooper Kupp, but he emerges in this one, 22 total targets. 22!
Yeah.
That's absolutely wild. And I mean, the fact that, he's healthy now, I think we're probably looking at Cooper Kupp as a weekly top 5 wide receiver at the very least. But I think we're going to get a really good look at some of the depth here on the Rams depth chart. And spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about a lot of these guys on the waiver wire show or the waiver wire segment here because,
you can't throw it every time to Cooper Kupp.
Around.
Yeah, you can't. If Cooper Kupp gets 22 targets per game, he's not going to make it to November. He's already an older receiver. He just can't have that much wear and tear on his body. He played every snap in week 1. That can't happen moving forward. Sean McVay's got to figure out other options in this passing attack, and we'll get to those names later. Let's talk about Christian McCaffrey really quickly. We talked about him a little bit in the first segment. How concerned are you about McCaffrey's calf/Achilles kind of moving forward?
Here's the thing. I'm no medical expert, but obviously the Achilles component is what kind of scares you. And an Achilles injury, once that is ruptured, you are not coming back. So I'm not necessarily worried about Christian McCaffrey, the player. I'm not doing the hashtag our injury is a problem for him, but calf injuries have actually been kind of a lingering issue. He had a calf injury at the end of last year, kind of lingered into the Super Bowl. Again, wasn't limited, but spent a lot of time on the injury report, limited in practice. And then that seeps into the offseason here. Now it's seeping into the regular season. I'm just wondering, again, for this 49ers offense, who they're playing for their Super Bowl here, what are the chances that they really feel good rolling out Christian McCaffrey once he is deemed healthy enough for 25 plus touches a game? I just don't think it's reasonable.
I don't think it's reasonable either. I got to assume they're going to be more cautious moving forward here. So we got other guys to talk about. Okay, let's talk about Jordan Love. He suffered an MCL sprain. There's some belief that he could only miss maybe a game or 2. The initial reports were 3 to 6 weeks. Again, we're talking from a dynasty perspective, so nothing overly concerning here. But what about in the short term?
In the short term, you definitely need to probably find a contingency plan, probably fading some of these, Green Bay wide receivers. I think Jaden Reed probably going to be the safest option for you if, Jordan Love does miss some time here, just from a volume standpoint, just from the fact that they can scheme up some of these targets closer to the line of scrimmage. They can generate some touches for him in the run game, which we saw in week 1. I think he's probably going to be the safest bet. But a guy like Christian Watson, like I'm not going to trust Malik Willis to deliver him the football. But like, can you, if you need a 1 week loaner, like in dynasty managers, you're probably going to have to execute a trade. If you are in a position where you need a quarterback starter, maybe you're in a super flex and you just want to fill that spot. How about Geno Smith, who's coming off a pretty solid game here? Like there are some decent options that I think you can get at a pretty low price. A Sam Darnold, if you
Derek
will,
Carr.
like Derek Carr. Like I actually think this is a good time to need a quarterback.
Justin Fields, like if Justin Fields is still available in your dynasty leagues, I can't imagine
And
he
he's
is.
not. He's not.
He's probably
But
not. But if,
again, these guys might be, trade targets that you can get relatively cheap, add depth to your dynasty roster in a super flex format specifically.
yep,
And you might be okay.
you'd be okay for a week or two.
Yeah.
You're starting Malik Willis this week. It's the Colts. I mean, the Colts did not play particularly well on defense. They gave up like 150 rushing yards in that game. Actually, 176 rushing yards.
You know what? If I have Malik Willis, I need to start him, I probably would. Like, here's the thing about Malik Willis. Do you trust him as a passer? Absolutely not. But he does have, a pretty smart offensive coordinator who, maybe Malik Willis isn't fully integrated in the system here, but they're going to have the week at least to kind of scheme up a certain group of plays that they feel like Malik Willis can execute. We know he's a top end, mobile quarterback, dual threat dude. So like maybe the floor as a passer isn't going to be super high, but if he doesn't feel like he can make the reads, probably going to take off and run, right?
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if he has like 75 rushing yards and a touchdown next week. And if he does that for you and gives you, 14, 15 points, it helps you survive a week in a super flex league. He's done his job. So I wouldn't be afraid of starting Malik Willis. The other thing here is that the Packers have a little bit more time because they played on Friday to get a game plan going for Malik Willis. They've known about this injury for, several days now. I expect him to be pretty limited as a passer, as you mentioned, but still be overall effective in the run game. Let's talk about the tight end position. We had a couple of injuries, actually both of them in the same game. David Njoku has a ankle sprain. It still hasn't been determined if it's a high ankle sprain or a low ankle sprain, but it does seem like he's going to miss some time. Jake Ferguson, the Cowboys tight end, has an MCL sprain, but it sounds like they're more concerned about the bone bruise. The MCL sprain was really only like a week injury. He's actually going to practice on Wednesday, which is wild to me. What are you doing here if you have one of these two players as your starting tight end?
Actually, I think this is a really intriguing time, and we're going to get into like some tight end potential pickups here, but you have Theo Johnson, who had a very high route participation rate this year or this week, ran, I think, like top 5 number of routes among all tight ends here in week 1 as a rookie. Pretty wild. I do think Jordan Akins, for what it's worth, like backup tight end for the Cleveland Browns, could shoe into a role pretty quickly. And I mean, he's never been a feature of any offense, but I do think probably generally underrated for what he can bring to a team in terms of like a step up when you need to role. 6'4", 245 pounds. Like I think he could be a decent flyer. And then let's talk about the Cowboys. Are there any Dallas Cowboys tight ends that you feel you can just shoe into your lineup? Or is this a situation where you're pivoting away from the Cowboys tight end entirely and going full steam ahead with Brandon Cooks, who maybe is the biggest beneficiary of this?
I think it's actually Jalen Tolbert that probably will get more work. I
Ooh.
just think you're going to see him running more routes. There is a tight end that I think is going to see a lot more work, that's going to see the targets. Unfortunately, he's just not listed as a tight end on all these sites. It's Hunter Lipke, who is the Cowboys fullback, and on Sleeper, ESPN, Yahoo, he's listed as a running back. But Mike McCarthy said he's going to be the guy that's basically your starting tight end next week. And that's really unfortunate for us fantasy players because that doesn't help us at all. But yeah, if we eventually get tight end eligibility for Hunter Lipke, I think he becomes someone who is at least intriguing. But no, there's no 1-for-1 replacement here for Jake Ferguson yet.
Fair enough.
Yeah, sucks. All right, let's talk about the waiver wire. Who should you go out to acquire this week to help your dynasty rosters? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, the place to make all of your NFL wagers. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you're going to be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. Someone like me who is a Cowboy fan in Pennsylvania I love having Sunday Ticket. It's absolutely fantastic. It's what I need to watch my favorite team. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Go check out all of the lines for week 2, including Kate's Steelers being 3-point favorites over Denver this week. That one's interesting. The Cowboys 6.5-point favorites over the Saints right now on FanDuel. Go check out all of the lines. Visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Everydayers on Wednesday's show. We've got Matt Williamson here to answer all of your Twitter questions, so make sure you send them into us at Marcus_Mosher, at Kate Majuk, at Williamson NFL. But Kate, let's finish up the show here by discussing some waiver wire targets going into week 2. Who is your #1 target this week?
Now, let's preface this by saying we know that your dynasty leagues, the availability of players, depending on how big your league is, how many players are in your league, how deep your benches are, like availability can be really hard to judge. So we're going to give you some players that I think fit the realm of like, maybe they're available in, some of your deepest leagues. Maybe they're available, so we're trying to give you a lot of options here. Let's just cover the top, a couple of players that you should be looking out for who are probably not available, but double check. Got to be Wan'Dale Robinson, right?
I mean, as the biggest Wan'Dale Robinson fan in the world, there's a little football card I picked up from him the other day. Wan'Dale Robinson had 12 targets against the Vikings. And they asked Brian Dable about the wide receiver depth chart, and he said, well, we've got Malik Neighbors as our 1, Wan'Dale's our 2, and everybody else is kind of falling in line. He got 12 targets, 1 carry. It just seems like he's going to be a big part of the offense. And with the offensive line, Kate, being a mess in New York, it's really easy just to throw screens to Wan'Dale Robinson, give him drag routes, jet sweeps. It feels like without Saquon Barkley, they need somebody else that has some explosiveness to their game. I think in PPR leagues, Wan'Dale Robinson is a fantastic flex option every single week.
Love that. And speaking of, PPR plays, double check your waivers for Justice Hill, Ravens running back, Baltimore's quote unquote backup, but actually played a decent chunk of time here in their season opener. 54% of offensive snaps, saw 8 targets, caught 6 of those for 51 yards, only had 1 run, but I think we saw that, it might be kind of similar to the way that we saw the Titans utilize Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears last year, where Tajay Spears played a good chunk of the snaps. And I got to admit, I'm just kind of pleasantly surprised to see that Lamar Jackson is targeting the running back position.
Justice Hill looked good too. Like, he was a very good receiver. He's also one of these players that's been in this offense for a long time now. And it's clear that Baltimore just trusts him in big situations. So that's a fantastic call. Who else do we got?
Let's talk about the Rams in general, because I think there are a bunch of speculative ads here. If I'm targeting one player from the Rams, it's definitely going to be Demarcus Robinson, who has played kind of a pivotal role here in both this game and, even to close out last year. He ranked 2nd on the team, only behind Cooper Kupp in terms of routes run, 47 total routes run here 7 targets, 4 receptions, 42 receiving yards. Not like a stat line that's going to pop off the page, but all things considered, if you're looking at a player who has the most to gain, he knows Sean McVay's system. He was with the team last year. And you'll remember in the final 5 games that Demarcus Robinson played for the team last year in a full capacity, without any limitations in the regular season, he was pretty dang productive, had 4 total receiving touchdowns, 50 plus receiving yards in 3 of those 5 games, 80 plus receiving yards in 2 of them. He was fantasy relevant.
I like Tyler Johnson. I kind of want Tyler Johnson this week. I thought he looked
good. I mean, make your case, because I think Tyler Johnson, also an intriguing ad for what it's worth. He led all wide receivers this week in terms of yards, receiving yards after contact. Fun stat.
Yeah, I mean, he's just good after the catch, and he's bounced around the league a little bit. I think if you're looking for somebody that can play outside in the slot, it's probably Tyler Johnson. I would pick him up and sit him on my bench for a week or so just to see for sure what the role is going to look like. I want to see who is getting the most snaps outside of Cooper Kupp, but that's probably the guy for me that I want to gamble on just because I think he's got the highest upside. One last player that I want you to talk about, Kate, Jalen McMillan, I don't know if you said he was a flex guy last week. Maybe you did. I don't remember. What do you think about Jalen McMillan?
Promotion candidate.
I was
and you
teasing.
know what?
I was teasing.
Oh my gosh. I was hurt because he actually had what totally should have been a touchdown. Didn't come to fruition, but I love to see the opportunity. He had 3 targets, only caught 1 of them, 31 yards here, did get a touchdown. And I do think that, like, generally speaking, saw a decently bigger role than even I expected, having, said promoted him in promotion. Like, even I was pleasantly surprised, and I was the one recommending him on that episode. So
yeah, I think that Tampa Bay offense is just going to be really fun. I don't know if they can support 3 wide receivers and a running back, but who knows? Maybe Baker Mayfield is that kind of dude at quarterback. So I think Jalen McMillan is a really fun speculative ad in like shorter bench dynasty leagues because there's a lot of talent there. That is
definitely,
Go ahead.
Definitely agree. I want to name one more person here quickly. Going back to the Rams, Colby Parkinson, tight end for the LA Rams, was already a speculative ad with Tyler Higbee absent, but just wanted to point out the difference in terms of the usage of these tight ends. Colby Parkinson ran 42 routes on the day, that ranked 3rd on the team. The other 2 tight ends, Davis Allen, Hunter Long, combined for 6 total routes run. He is clearly the primary receiving tight end in this offense. Saw 5 targets, caught 4 of them, 47 yards. I think he could be an every week play at the tight end position for, the weeks to come.
All right, that is it. Go ahead.
That is me saying my piece.
I'm gonna keep doing this until she's like add 5 more guys. It's gonna be great. No, I do want to mention one more guy.
Gotta catch them all, right?
I know. How about Devon Bailey from the Denver Broncos, our 39-year-old rookie receiver? He's not that old, but he's pretty doggone old. Got a bunch of targets, and this Denver offense, it seems like, Kate, they're going to throw the crap out of the football. I think Bo Nix had 42 passing attempts in his first NFL game. Against Pittsburgh next week, I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. I imagine it's going to be a lot of short passes in this game. But I'm just interested in any receiver that's going to get that much work. So Devon Bailey, a rookie receiver who I believe is 25 or 26 years old, somebody that I'm at least paying attention to on my waiver wire.
Love it.
All right. We can end the show now, I think we're good. Go check out the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Check us out on YouTube as well. And make sure you check out the new Locked On NFL show 2 shows a day, 5 shows a week. Fantastic content from Tyler Rowland and Tony Wiggins. Go check out that show. Go check out Kate on Twitter at Kate Modjuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. Enjoy your Tuesday. We'll see you right back here on Wednesday with Matt Williamson.